All right, folks, so we've got our base plate for our Trammel Toy, our corner blocks made, our slide blocks made, and we are ready to start putting together our assembly for this thing. So down here you should have an assembly. Let's go ahead and go to that. I usually like to move my whatever I'm working on to the beginning of my tabs. And we're going to go ahead and start putting this together. So let's insert the base. Now, the base consists of two parts. If you expand this, there are two here, but I'm going to bring this in as the part studio that contains both at the same time. So we're going to click on this base and bring it in and click it. Now, don't do what I'm about to do. Well, first of all, I'm going to say okay, but I'm going to show you that these are two separate separate pieces within the assembly, so you can actually take one and move it. Don't do that though. If you did, let's hit undo and get it back so that it's together. Now I want these to hold together as they are. So the way to do this is to come up here to the middle where it says group. And the instances I want to group are the bottom plate and the top plate. And hit OK. And now those are now held together. We could have mated them, but it's just easier to group them so they stay together. Now, it's also a good idea, turn off that origin, always annoys me, to have a bigger piece fixed in an assembly. So we're going to take either one of these, it doesn't matter which one, and hit fix. And it will show that that is held in place. And now I can't, I can pan, but I can't move apart, okay? All right, excuse me. Now we're going to bring in our four corner guide blocks, kind of like we did this at the same time. I'm going to zoom out a little bit just so I can have some room in here. We're going to insert those corner blocks. Now again, I'm going to choose all of the corner blocks at the same time, not individual pieces, and bring them in. Click. Now say OK. Well, before I move anything, I want to group them together just like we did the other ones. I'm going to group the four blocks, lower left, lower right, upper left, upper right. All four of them are going to get grouped together. Okay, so now they move together as a unit and they're locked together in that position. Now I only need one mate since I grouped them to hold these down here. I think I'll just choose this corner right here and that corner right there to do my fastened mate, which will lock those together. If I'm going to zoom in, got to make sure that your little mate icon shows that right now the blue little z-axis is going this direction, which is what I want. Click, and I need to make sure that axis goes the same way down here on this corner. Let's do it wrong first. Let's have it go the wrong way. Whoops. You know, now whoops, it goes the wrong way. Now you might be able to do something like, wait, which way do I flip it? I don't know. So rather than that, let's just make sure we've got it right the first time. Fasten mate. Make sure that the little arrow is, the axes are pointing the same way. Sometimes you have to hover around a little bit. And that looks good. All right, cool. So now those guys are locked together. Now, we're going to bring in our slide blocks. I'm going to do these I'm going to do one at a time. So, whoops, I didn't mean to go back to that. I meant to stay in my assembly and insert slide block, but this time I'm going to expand that and I'm going to bring in just the pin slide block. Bring it maybe down in there. Now, if it bothers you that it's not facing the right way, don't forget that you can click on a part and use these tools to move it or rotate it. So I can move it around so that it's facing the right way. I don't have to do that. But it just makes it a little easier to see. Now, this time, we're not going to do a fasten mate because these are called slider blocks for a reason. They slide, right? And if you'll remember, there was some clearance that we created when we made these so that it's not fitting perfectly in the space, but it's got a little gap. But it will sit down flat on this surface and in the middle, hopefully. So we can take our, up here is a slider. That's what we want. And the two mates are going to be, one is going to be right there in the middle. Notice it lines up with the center of that click. And the other one will be the middle bottom of this one, making sure again that it faces the same direction with that blue Z-axis. Click. Now, went away, but I'm going to be able to zoom. Okay, bring it back and say, okay, looks good. And now, once I've got that done, I don't want another slider mate right now. You should be able to, grab that part and slide it along that axis that we created. Cool. Now another little side note is that we did make this, that notice that this piece sticks up above, and that's by design, it's on purpose. And if we look really carefully, I'm gonna look at the back side, notice that there is space. We created some clearance for that to be able to move around in there, okay, on all sides. There's a little gap there, a little gap there. You know, if we were to 3D print this, we need to have some clearance. All right, there's slider number one. Slider number two, I'm going to show you a problem that we have with this. When we bring in slider number two, whoops, let's insert the screw slide block. Bring it in here. Now it's already kind of oriented the right way. Now, if we do this on this side, we have a problem, because if I go to do a slider mate and I go to put my piece on here, the problem is that the middle of this piece, because it ends over here, is not in the right place. So we have a problem. Now we could move this over to the other side, where we do have nothing interfering with the middle of this, but because we may need this later on, let's show how we can solve this problem. So we don't have the ability to put the slider thing there, but we can make our own mate connector. So up here at the top, there's this little thing that almost looks like Pac-Man to make a mate connector. Now, it only wants to put it the same as those other ones, but I'll be able to move this. So we can put it in the middle, right on the top of the bottom plate. Click, okay? But now notice I can move it. So I'm going to move this, and it says, which way do you want to move it? Well, the green axis, the one going up, is the y-axis. So I'm going to move that in the direction of that, 0.25 inches. Enter should give me a little preview, and that is where I want that to go. So I've created my own little connector for that. Cool. All right. Now next is we're going to create a slider mate again. And this time we're going to use that same connector that we just used and the bottom middle, just like we did before, of this one, making sure that the axes go the same direction. And good. Okay. Now that mate connector will show up until I go down here and just turn it off. All right, so now I've got my slider and my slider. Cool, that's gonna work out really well later on. Unfortunately, we're not gonna get to that today because it's gonna take too long, but we will get the crank arm on there and get it all moving. All right, now we are missing our pins and our little hexagonal pins. Now these are not bolts, they're pins with a hex head. You can't do a bolt because how are you going to screw that on there unless you bolted everything on there first and then glued this plate on next, which is a possibility, and that's a way that you could get that done. And maybe that's the way this is put together, but I am going to do this. I'm going to build my own pin and my own hex pins. Now this one also has a hexagonal shape, but these two hexes are actually different sizes, so we're going to have to make those separately. All right, now the easiest way to do this, I think, is to use that sketch again that we made these hexes on and use that rather than having to resize and measure and all that sort of stuff. So let's do this and start a new part studio. We're going to call this part Studio, rename it, and call it Hex Pin Block. And we need to call it something that I recognize that it's different than the other pin we'll make later on. Now, I'm going to sketch on here, but first let's go to the base. And somewhere is a sketch that has these hexes in it. So if you hover over, it's not sketch 1. For me, it's sketch 2. It might be different for you. I'm going to right click on that sketch that has those things and hit copy sketch. Okay. Then we're going to go back to our hex pin blocks thing, right click on the top, say I want a new sketch. P gets rid of the planes and views normal. Actually, we don't even need to view normal this time because I'm going to right click and paste sketch entities. Now it does it off there somewhere, you know, up where it's off of the origin, but that's okay. And we're going to, now before I click OK, I'm going to say good to place it. It doesn't matter which one I use. I'll use this bottom one. I need to draw the circle that's going to be for the pin part because I already have the hex part. So I need to measure that. So in here, I need to know what the size of this is. So let me move myself out of the way here. Come on. There we go. So down here in the measure tool, I'm going to measure the diameter of that. I think it's 1.177. I got to move myself a lot. Yep. 0.177 is the size of that thing. So back in my hex pin block, I'm going to draw a circle in the middle of this. It is 0.177. Now that's okay that it fits exactly. We'd adjust it if we were really 3D printing this. Good. Got the sketch. And now I'm just going to extrude this part, not the inside, just like the donut. And those plates are 0.25 thick, so it's only going through 1.25. Enter. Now the sketch is going to go away, okay, but I can go turn it back on again, and we need to extrude that circle in the middle, but let's find out how much. So I am going to go to my assembly to see how far it's going to extrude. It's going to extrude from this point to that point. So let's measure that thing. Measure that point to that point is 1.1. Okay, which is, that's how long. Actually, the extrusion is from the bottom. So let me try that again. Measure that again. Sure. From the bottom to the top. 0.135. Could have added just 0.125. All right, let's try that. Go back to our hex pin block. I've turned back on the sketch that I made that donut looking thing with, and we're going to extrude. I might have to zoom in a little bit to get that bottom circle, that part, and we're going to 1.35. Okay. Cool. Turn off the sketch. So that's not there anymore. Make it whatever color you want. And come down to part 1 and I don't know, I'll make it like orange. All right, you do you. All right, so we've got that pin. Now we're ready to go back to the assembly and we're ready to insert the 4 of those pins. So we're going to insert this hex pin. And we need it. I wonder if I can bear with me a second. I'm going to see if I can, when I come in here, it says 1. I wonder if I can right click. Or click and drag. I want to place 4 of them, but I don't want to do it one at a time. The 1 shows up. There might be a way of doing it, but where you can do multiples. I don't know how to do that. So for now, somebody figures it out, let me know. All right, cool. So we're doing that. All right, now to place these in, I think the easiest way to do this is to do a fastened mate with a midpoint and a midpoint. So let's do a fastened mate, and we're going to zoom in. I'm going to get, I want that, there we go. The edge, middle of the edge of that, and the middle of the edge of that with the axes facing the same way. Cool. Now this is where I'm glad it leaves that that fastened mate window open to do the next one, because I'm going to do the next one. Come on. There we go. Next one. There we go. And last one. Come on, get to the right spot. And good. All right, so we've got all of those. Let's go around. Oops, I don't know how I did that. I got an extra one, but I did. Okay, cool. So now we've got our pins in there. Oh, it's the same color as that other corner guide block. I'm going to change the color then. Let's edit appearance. I don't know. Blue. There we go. All right. Now we need to do these other two pins. Now I'm going to make a mistake on purpose, but I'm going to, and I'll explain after. So I need to measure that one, which is 0.191. And we're going to measure the other one, which I already know is 0.23. All right. So we measured those guys, 0.191 and 0.23. Let's make another part studio. And we'll do them both at the same time. And let's just call this pins. Oops. Gotta rename it first. All right. And this will be pretty basic. Let's sketch. I don't know why by default now the planes aren't showing, because I hit P to turn on the planes. Turn them on. Okay, so I'm going to hit P to turn them on. I'm going to start a new sketch on the top. P turns off the planes. I'm going to end to view normal. And I'm just drawing two circles. Really, really basic. The first one is 0.191. And the other one is 0.23. All right. Finish the sketch and extrude those. We should remember our extrusion was 0.135, and also remember I'm making a mistake on purpose. Or 1.35, sorry, not 0.1. 1.35. Okay. You can change the colors of them if you'd like. I'm going to stick with that. And back into our assembly, where we're going to put two sets of those pins in. Insert, pins. We're going to put two of those. Okay. Now, it's a little hard to see. You might have to measure, but hopefully you can see. Whoops. Sometimes I do that. Where you can see which ones are bigger. So the easiest way to do these is called a revolute mate, because these might spin a little bit, and that's okay. They're just staying in place. So we're going to call it a revolute mate, and you choose the top middle of the pin and the top middle of the hole. Now it might end up, if it ends up sticking out, you just hit the flip. Okay, good, and it'll keep my next revolute up there. Make sure that I've got the smaller of the two holes. Good. And that's got the axis going the wrong way. Let's see what happens if I click that and click that. It might, no, it put it in the correct way. There, and there too. There. Now, I told you I was going to make a mistake on purpose, and I did. So let's look at the bottom. Oh, look, these pins are coming all the way through. So this shares a space with this base plate. Now, I'm going to show you something here that you can do that's kind of cool, where we can go to the right and do this thing called interference detection. Now it wants to know what are we detecting interference between, and we can select everything by dragging a box around all of it. Okay, and what it's doing is it's showing me where solid space is being shared. So I messed up on those. We'll talk about interference detection again. All right, so I messed up. The pin length was supposed to be 1.1, not 1.35, but that's an easy thing to fix. Let's just go back to the pins, double click on extrude, and change that to 1.1. Check. Go back to our assembly. Nothing sticking through the bottom. Let's do an interference detection. No interferences. Good, we're ready to go. All right, so we've got our pins, our sliders. We're looking good. The only thing is that we now are missing this one little guy that's holding this one block, and this pin over here that we will deal with next time. So this last one over here, we're going to put a screw in there, but we're not going to build one. We're going to go get one. So we've done this before with the selfie stick a long time ago. Let's remember. Insert. This time we're going to go to standard content. Okay. Now, yours is going to look different than mine because mine remembers the last thing that I did. But what we want is we want ANSI inch standard stuff. When we want to go to bolts and screws, we want our class to be, choose to drop down and find machine screws. And I want a pan head machine screw. Okay. Now, the size that's by default is really, really tiny, but you're going to choose this drop down menu and go all the way down to a number 1024. That is a size 10 screw. It's a little less than 1/4 of an inch. 24 threads per inch is what that means. Let's do a Phillips head instead of a slot. Slot means it would go all the way across. Let's do a PH means Phillips head. Okay. And our length is going to be 5/8 of an inch, which is 0.625. And it should change the thread length to that also because that's by default. Okay, looks good. Now, it's a little tricky to do this, so we're going to zoom in, and where we're going to put this is on that circle where the bottom of this kind of this base plate is. So when you hit insert, we're going to go down there to that hole, and it might take a minute for it to show up. Now I don't know where, okay, the screw is floating around until I click again. It's a little hard to, sometimes the screw gets in the way. There it is. So you might have to try this a few times. Click. And why isn't it wanting to do it? I'm having an issue that you might have too. Oh, weird. Look, it went way up in there. So if something doesn't work right, hit undo. Okay, so notice that that screw is now showing up again. Now, the screw is already there. So that happens sometimes. You might have to play around with this a little bit. So I'm going to undo again so that I don't have a screw in here. Notice there isn't a screw at the bottom of my list. I'm going to try that one more time. Insert. Okay. Now it already by default wants to know what I want to insert it to. So I'm going to go down again to try and hover over that spot. And it still is not wanting to do it. Okay. So I'm going to do it a different way. Let's undo. Notice the screw is still in there. Okay, so it's been inserted over here, which is fine. Boom. Okay. Now, it's already got its own little mate, but let's go ahead and do a revolute mate, and I'm going to choose this mate that's already on there And I'm going to choose this part of the hole. Now, right now it's sticking up. That's easy to fix. I just flip the direction around and click OK. And it should be down inside of there. And because it's left that little mate on, I should be able to turn that off. Let's see. I don't want the visibility of the screw off. I want just the visibility of that mate. Oh, interesting. Let's try down here and see if that one can be turned off. Huh. I don't know why it can't be turned off. There must be a way. Oh, there we go. Under the panhead screw, I can hide that. There we go. All right, sometimes you just got to poke around. All right, folks, I think that's getting to be good enough for the day. So, these videos are not as long as a full-length class because I assume you're going to make some mistakes and have to undo things, which we did. Next class will be for dealing with the pins and the little crank arm, and we'll actually get that dude moving. All right. Hope it worked out. See you next time.